Hi viewers, in this video we are going to discuss about the date value function in Excel. The date value function helps us convert a human readable date string into serial number format, allowing us to use it in calculations. Excel stores date as a serial numbers where January 1st, 1900 is considered day 1. This is the syntax of the date value function. The argument you pass into the date value function is the date text. The date text is the text that represents a date in a format Excel can recognize. The year can be represented by 1 to 4 digits. This is the example of the date value function. If you pass December 31st, 2023, it is going to return a value of 45,909. This number represents the serial number for December 31st, 2023. I have more tips for you to understand the date value function. Date value function is used for converting imported text dates or user input date into Excel date values. Excel stores date as a sequential serial numbers. By default, January 1st, 1900 is serial number 1. If the year is omitted, date value uses the current year from your computer system date. The function returns a hash value error if it can't recognize the date format. The return serial number is typically formatted as a date in Excel but can be used in calculation as a number. For you to understand the date value functions better, let us jump into Excel. I have some data here so that we can use it to practice. I have already entered some date here in form of a string, that is text, okay? What I did here, each of these date to make it a string or text, all I did is to append a single quote before the date. You can see I appended a single quote before the date. For you to understand better how I enter the date string, let me select one cell. Select this cell. Let me enter a date here. The date I enter here is 25th of July 2024. Let me press enter. Excel recognizes it as a date. For me to make it to be a string, okay, that is a normal text, all I need to do is to modify the date value here. I'm going to append a single quote like this before the date, okay. If I press enter now, it is now recognized as a text. So for you to understand it better, let me expand this cell. You can see a text is aligned to the left by default. If I remove this quote now, let me remove that quote. Let me press enter now. Do you see it is now aligned to the right, which simply means that Excel recognizes this as a number. Remember that the date is stored as a number. And you can see by default, number is aligned to the right. Let me append a single quote again. Press enter. You can see that it is now converted to a text. That is how I enter all this date as a string, guys, okay. You can see each of them is having the single quote before them. You can see it. For you to understand how the date value function works, let me select one cell here. Let me enter a normal date. Let me select this cell. Let me type, okay, this is a normal date. This date is just a normal date. It is not going to be formatted as a text. You can see that I did not append a single quote. Let me press enter. Okay, you can see this one is a text, this one is a normal date. I want us to experiment the difference between this when you pass it into the date value function. Let me select this cell now. I go to the formula bar. Let me type equals to date value. Let me pass the one that is formatted as a string. Okay, I select this cell, close the function and press enter. Do you see that it returns a serial number for this date? Okay, it returns a serial number for this date. So it simply means that this 25th of July 2024, this is the serial number. Let me select this cell so that we can now experiment with the one that is a normal date. I go to the formula bar, I type equals to date value. Now this time around, let me pass this one. You can see this one is a normal date. Let me pass the normal date. Let me close the function and press enter. Do you see we have an error? Okay, that is the value error. The reason why it throws this error, it is because the date value function expects the date to be a string. It expects it to be a text, not a number. Okay, that's why it is showing this error. Okay, you can see the first one is a string. It does not throw an error. But the second one is throwing error because it is a number. Now, even if I change this date that is a string here, I can change it to a date text like this. Let me type. Okay, you can see what I type here is July 25, 2024. It is also a string. Let me press enter whether it is going to return the same number. Let me press enter now. Do you see there is no error? That means that Excel recognizes this as a valid date. When you enter a valid date as a string, Excel is going to recognize it as a valid date. Why this one is throwing an error? If I turn this to a string now by appending a single quote, you see the error is gone. You can see the error is gone, and you can see I have the same result. That is how the date value function works, guys. Let us quickly get the serial number of each of these dates we have in this table. I select this cell, I go to the formula bar. Let me type equals to date value. Let me pass this cell that contains the date as a text. Close it and press enter. Do you see it returned the serial number for this date? Let me use the autofill to get the rest. Okay, you can see that it is now displaying the serial number of each of these dates except this one. You can see this one is not a valid date. That's why it is now showing this error value. Remember that when we were learning about how to enter a valid date, when you separate a date with a period, Excel does not recognize it as a valid date. That's why it is showing the error. That is this value error here. Okay, but the rest, you can see their serial numbers. If I want to return the normal date from the serial number, all I need to do is to select this cell. I go to the formula bar. I'm going to type equals to. I just select the serial number, the cell that contains the serial number, and press enter. It is still return the serial number, but what I need to do here is to change this general format to date. If I change it to date format now, you see it return the date. Okay, so let me use the autofill to get the rest. You can see it get the date of each of these serial numbers, except this one. It is showing error because this one is not a valid date. Okay, so for the formula I have in column C, let me use the formula text to show you the formula. I select this cell, I go to the formula bar. Let me type formula text. I select this cell that contains the date serial number, close the function and press enter. You can see that it returned the formula we have here. Let me use the autofill. Okay, we have all the formula that correspond to each of the data we have here, guys. I hope with these examples and illustrations, you can be able to use the date value function to get a serial number from a valid date. Thank you for watching.